Alright, welcome back. We are going to talk about functions. So this is the first thing we looked at, I think, in that first video when I dived right in. And we have this isPrime function, this number of primes from x to y function, and the primes x to y gets called here with two values from a line in a file. And so basically what happens is when this function gets called, these two variables get pushed to the stack, and then we're basically in a different part of memory than the main function for this function right here. And so this int I in total, they get their own space, sort of like, think of it as just in this block of code that's executing. And so this x and this y are actually given a little bit of space before the I and the total in memory. And so this function just kind of runs by itself there. And I kind of mentioned earlier in that first video, functions have a type a lot like your variables. So this function will return or evaluate to an integer. So down here where I have primes x to y, a, b, it's actually giving an integer to this d, this digit. So anywhere that you use a function like this isPrime right here, it's basically the same as using whatever the return value is there. So if this returns 30, it'd be the same as putting printf 30 right here. Alright, so functions have a return type, and they have their function identifier, just the name of it. And everything's case sensitive, so primes x to y is going to look exactly right here when I call it. That's primes x to y there. Up here we have our parameters, function parameters x and y, which are both constant ints, which means that the const means that when x and y come into the function, they're not going to change in here. And then down here I send a and b as arguments to the function. And for any function call to work, your arguments are going to have to match type with your parameters. So if I tried to send a character or a floating point something into this function, it's not going to work because the compiler is going to look for the function with the two integers as parameters, and that's what it'll find right here. So you'll get compiler errors if you call it with something other than two integers right here, and it's expecting an integer return. And so at the end of the function you're going to have to return an integer. Same thing with up here. This has an integer return type, and so it's expecting a return value that is some type of integer type. If I had said double isPrime, I'd have to be returning doubles, and that actually wouldn't make any sense as a function, but anyways. So after you have that first line right here with your return type, your function identifier or name, and your parameters, which are actually optional. You can write a function without parameters. You can actually write a void function as well. So like void do something, right? And then you have like int a that you send to it. You can just return from this function. You don't have to return a value. Stuff. So instead of returning an int or returning whatever, you're just getting out of the function when you come to the end of it. Same as you can have no parameters and say it returns like an int, and so you're just going to return like, I don't know, some random value, right? So yeah, you can have functions that do all sorts of things. One One thing that I haven't really mentioned too much is formatting or coding style. So usually with a function or your main, your open and closed curly braces will be right against the wall. They'll be not indented at all. And then everything inside the function or inside your main is going to be indented at least one level. And then for further indents like if blocks, for blocks, or for if nested, one way to do it is after your conditional or after the opening of that block, you can open it on that line and then close it on the same line as your if. Looks kind of neat. You can see that this for ends here, this if ends here. That's obviously not the only way to do it, and there's really a ton of ways. This looks kind of just as neat if, and then it opens as far as, you know, the braces stay in line with this. But since white space doesn't really matter to the compiler, it's all either your choice or your boss's choice or whoever's making you write code as to how it looks. Let's see what else. Because of block scope, see anything inside this block right here, so like this int I, this int total, they're only going to exist in that block of code. So if I tried to reference total down here in main, it's not going to make any sense. It's going to ask where the hell are you looking for total for? I don't see a total here because it's only in this block. But you can notice things like right here, I have A and B declared, and then I go a nest down, I have a block of code, and I reference A and B inside here. So you can create it outside a block and then look at it inside, something nested deeper. But if I were to say like right here inside this, whoops, if I were to say int blah, I wouldn't be able to later outside of that for loop say like blah equals 2 or add 1 to blah or anything, because it would be out of scope. So we wouldn't be able to see it there. I guess I'll leave it at that and get more in depth in functions in the next one. Understanding functions is pretty damn important for programming. So we'll go a little more in depth next time.